I'm here with my dear friend Rodrigo and the incoming Executive Director of NCTE, and we want to talk to you about that.
Hey everybody, good to see you. Thanks for tuning in today. Like Mara said, my name is Rodrigo Hang-Leitonen, or Rigo for short. I'm currently one of the two Deputy Executive Directors here at NCTE, and I'm just so honored to follow Mara as the next Executive Director this summer. And we just wanted to take this opportunity to kind of chat with y'all and each other about what this all means for NCTE.
Yeah, thank you so much, Rigo, and thank you everybody for watching this video. So, Rigo, why don't we just have a conversation for folks? Do you have any questions for me?
Well, my first question is just how are you feeling about this transition? I mean, we got a lot of transitions as a trans org, but the executive director transition.
Yeah, I'm feeling really great, really optimistic. I've been a big supporter of yours as my successor, so I'm super thrilled about that. And honestly, I'm really proud of the whole organization for how we're approaching this, and I think we're doing it pretty close to flawlessly. You are so ready, and any day now I will be so unnecessary. I think that's the way it should be, and I'm really proud of us.
I don't know about unnecessary. I think you're going to be very necessary in the transgender movement for years to come. But I do really appreciate your vote of confidence in me. I mean, you and I have been working together for several years now already. Well, actually, I don't know, a decade, something like that in the trans movement. But then several years, 2 years here at NCTE, in particular with me being on staff. And you've always been so generous with your mentorship and your time and just really letting me peek behind the curtain all the time to really see how we get this done for trans people. So I'm really grateful for everything you've done to found this organization, to build it up from the ground up, and then to train this next generation of trans leaders, not just myself, but everyone else on the staff, everyone else who's been part of the trans movement, so that we can just keep scoring more wins for our people.
Good. Well, I think you're ready. I think the organization's ready, and I think I'm ready. So does that feel right to you?
I think so, yeah. But I did want to ask you, with your history in founding this organization and just how far we've come as a transgender movement and transgender people, what do you think are some of the biggest changes that you've seen?
Well, without a doubt, the biggest change is that trans people now have political power and a political voice. It was one of the primary reasons NCT was founded, to give trans people a voice in Washington and around the country. And I think we've been tremendously successful about that. Another big part of why we were founded was to make what was then the gay rights movement really into an LGBTQ movement. And that has been so successful, maybe a little too successful. I heard me talk about how the LGBT groups are doing more and more trans work all the time, which is really great. But that's clearly the biggest difference. We have power in Congress, we have power, or we have a voice in Congress, we have a voice in the White House. The president has appointed 2 people to be confirmed by the Senate, and that's the number one thing. But when we think of the issues, healthcare. When we started NCTE, almost no insurance coverage at all for trans people. If you could get insurance, it almost always excluded any kind of transition-related anything, and the insurance companies always stretched that to hurt us. Number 2. I think, ID documents, that was not something anybody was working on except a couple people. There were some great people in California doing some driver's licensing work. And we really did a lot of that, and that's really great. And then I think another really huge change is the sort of the intersectional approach that the whole trans movement really is very attuned to and tries to follow. I'm sorry I'm going on so long about this, but you know, a fourth thing I just want to mention that's a big change that will lead me back to the one I just talked about is the United States Trans Survey, the US Trans Survey. Until we did that the first time with the task force in 2019 or 2009, there was no data. We would advocate before Congress, before state legislatures, and say the discrimination is really bad, but we don't know how bad. And now we know how bad. And if I could just talk about the intersectionality from a piece of data from the 2015 survey, I found it so interesting. We asked people if in the last year they had needed a healthcare provider. And if they needed one, did they get it? And if they didn't get it, why not? And we found these heartbreaking numbers that showed that 23% or a quarter of the trans people who needed healthcare didn't get it because they were afraid of discrimination and disrespect. That's not a surprise, I think, to most people that's still happening. But what we also found was that 33%, or a lot more, 10% more, didn't seek the healthcare they needed because they couldn't afford it. And what that tells us is that sometimes the biggest trans issue a trans person is facing is disrespect and discrimination based on gender identity and expression. But sometimes the biggest trans issue they're facing is poverty. Sometimes the biggest trans issue they're facing is racism or disability access. Because trans people are people who are people of color, who do have disabilities, who have other things in their lives that can cause them to be targeted for disrespect, discrimination, and of course, still even violence. Those are so many changes. Lives of trans people are very different than 20 years ago.
Yeah, that is absolutely true. And there's still such a long way to go. But I mean, I remember when I was living in a different state at the time. I'm in Washington, D.C. now, but I used to live in California. And when years earlier, when I had come out as trans, the idea of updating one's gender marker on an ID, it wasn't even a topic really, because it seemed so out of reach. But then, you know, fast forward a few years, I got to update the gender marker on my driver's license when I was living in California. And little did I know that was because of NCTE's work to a large degree. I mean, I used NCTE's website actually to figure out the process. And then, you know, over the years, I've been able to update more of these documents because of it. And I'm just so thrilled to be taking the helm of NCTE now and be able to continue that legacy, be able to continue that work and amplify it even more. But you're right that we still have such a long way to go if trans people are still disproportionately living in poverty or facing violence because of racism and trans misogyny. We're not there yet. You know, we have not won everything that we desperately need to win to keep people safe and to keep people free of harm. So NCT is going to keep pushing. We still got a lot to do.
What else about the future? What are your other plans?
Well, I'm really looking to expand trans people's political power. I mean, you said it before that now we're in a place where trans people have power and members of Congress are listening to us. And so, you know, we've made advances here. But the next step, if we're going to keep achieving these victories, is to add some organizing and add some election work to the policy work NCTE does. The way I like to think of it is that, you know, we've done a great job being in the halls of Congress and in front of these federal agencies and in front of government officials, educating them on why they need to change policy. But whenever we are meeting with a government official, then our organizers should be outside getting the constituents of that elected official to call the person and say, I'm a voter. I live in your district. I am watching you. You better do the right thing. You better vote the right way. So that's what I'm really excited about. Absolutely maintaining all of that excellent and just so transformative policy work we've ever done, but being able to amplify it being able to get even more out of it by putting in this organizing piece, putting in this election piece so that trans people vote, trans people are able to overcome voter ID laws and get over that fear and anxiety that voter ID laws bring and still cast a ballot. NCTE is in a great position to help trans people with that. No one knows voter ID laws than we do. No one knows identity documents like we do. So making sure that our trans community is registered to vote, turns out to vote, and then that people can join NCTE. People can be part of it. All of y'all watching, you know, we're going to build out volunteer opportunities and ways that you can be part of this organization, not just watching a video, but phone banking with us, text banking with us, sharing your story with the media. We've got a lot in store to really build this out so that you can be an active part of achieving these policy victories.
Oh, there's a new word, text banking. That's great.
Newfangled technology, changing all the time.
Well, do you think you have any questions for me?
Well, you know, can you talk a little bit about how you started NCTE? I mean, you've talked about the changes you've seen, but how did you even make this happen in the first place?
You know, it seems easier now in retrospect than it was at the time, but you know, I grew up alone, and not literally alone. My parents had 7 kids. We all lived together, but I didn't know any other trans people. There was no internet. There was no way for me to express this to the people around me. There was no way for them to help me. And when I finally started meeting other trans people in the early 90s, with the advent of the internet, I started really understanding how privileged I was. My family was incredibly accepting. I didn't lose my career. In the 90s, when I started going to support groups, we always told everybody that if you transitioned socially or medically, you were going to lose everything. You had to be ready to lose your family and your home and your job. And so many people would purposely leave their job and try to start a new career. And that was always a recipe for economic disaster, but there didn't seem to be much choice. And as I was transitioning and having a pretty lucky time of it, I just saw so many people who weren't. There was so much violence and death, and teenagers being murdered, and people having their kids taken away from them, and people being fired not just from their jobs, but then not being able to find anything in their career. And I knew I had to help. And 2002 and 2003 was this really amazing period of time. Before 2001, there were a couple of attorneys like Shannon Minter, Phyllis Fry, and Jennifer Levi who were working on trans issues, but none of them full-time. That was their whole job, and none of them really doing policy full-time. And then the task force hired Lisa Mote in 2001. And then in 2002, the Transgender Law Center was founded, and Sylvia Law Project. And that's really when the work got underway to start NCTE. It was just built from there, and then just people pitched in and helped, and people were hired and did amazing work. And we had a theory of change that worked and mattered, that we really believed that policy change could impact trans people's lives. And that resonated with a lot of people, and resonated with policymakers who, initially were almost universally, not universally, but almost universally hesitant to even meet with us, to get their picture taken with us. A friend and I used to have this thing called the flinch factor, where we would purposely touch a politician and see if they recoiled in horror that a trans person was touching them. It was very different times, and so many trans people have stepped up and stepped out, and we're winning. We're winning so big now, and I think that's really great. What was your story? What's your NCT story, or how'd you get here? Because you're not It's not like you're new to this movement.
No, I've been working in the movement for 13 years now, which is always funny because, people think I still got carded for a rated R movie, by the way, as an adult. That still happens. I look younger than I am. But yeah, I've been working in the movement, the LGBT movement, for 13 years. Some of that being transgender organizations specifically. And so I've been honored to work at a lot of these other organizations that NCTE partners with all the time. So that's how you and I first crossed paths. When I've been working in other movement orgs, but always collaborating, always working arm in arm to make sure we can secure some victories for trans people. But in terms of why I even started doing this work in the first place, really that's because of my family. And that might be kind of counterintuitive because, we don't actually agree on everything politically, but they are really political. I come from a really activist family. My grandfather was a community organizer in Cuba before that term was commonplace like it is more today. He did a ton of organizing work on the island. And then when my family had to flee Cuba, he continued that here in the United States. Him and his wife, my grandmother to some degree too, were part of organizing asylum seekers here in the US to rebuild their lives all over again. And then my mother, who was born in Cuba, but had immigrated to the US as a child, kept moving that forward, kept that family legacy moving, and actually served in Congress. She was the first Latina ever elected to Congress. It actually shocked her at the time. She did not know that she was the first Latina elected to Congress until a journalist called her to interview her. And she was like, "No, you must be wrong. I'm not the first Latina." And she was like, "No, I've done the research. You really are." So, my mom did not know that she was making history at the time, but she very much did. And it taught me so much. I mean, it meant that then since I was 3 years old, I was, following her along to meetings and everything. She's a working mom. There's still not enough daycare in, the halls of Congress. So I just tagged along with her to all these things. And it taught me a lot of how government works. I got into a lot of rooms that, you wouldn't really expect me to be in, and just kind of see, this is how the sausage gets made. This is how Congress works. This is what negotiations really look like. It gave me an inside perspective and just really shaped my interest in politics, my passion for policy change, and seeing that you really can get it done. I understand why folks are cynical sometimes about the political process, but I was fortunate to kind of see behind the curtain how you really can effectively make changes to transform people's lives. So I then carried that forward. When I came out as transgender, it did incidentally make me the first trans child of a member of Congress, which is just a weird factoid, but there we have it. So my mom and I took that as an opportunity to do some education, really share our stories, really share that families and Cuban American families in particular can support their trans kids. And that's then what brought me to this place of working in the movement. And there's really nothing I would rather be doing than fighting hard every day for our people. So that's how I came to NCTE, and so excited to keep it moving forward.
Well, that's amazing. Well, you're not going to be alone. There have been some amazing people over the years who have worked at NCTE, and really none more amazing than the staff we have now, I think. What do you want to talk about the staff a little bit? And how
we've got an incredible team. I mean, NCTE would not be able to get all of this done if it was not for the staff. It is not been all Mara, nor will it be all me. It really takes an entire team to get this done. Now we have just really rock star folks who've been doing a lot of hiring and got some incredible people on our team. And I could not be more grateful to have folks like this at working with me and working alongside me to make this happen. You know, we're going to be doing a lot more of getting the staff out there. You're not going to be seeing just me. You're going to be seeing everyone on the team doing interviews and getting out there and getting you involved in the work, all of you watching at home. So yeah, we've got incredible folks, and I could not be grateful to have this rock solid foundation as NCT goes into the next chapter.
Yeah, I think you're going to be supported incredibly well. And I am so pleased, thankful, proud, I don't know, that you're succeeding me in running my baby. But it's time, and I'm very excited about, you know, my prospects, and I'm very, very excited about NCT prospects. You are ready, my friend, and you are just going to just soar on this. So thank you so much for taking the helm. I just can't thank you enough.
Thank you, Mara. Thank you for founding this in such difficult times when, I mean, it was so much harder to be trans. It is still too hard to be trans today, and it used to be even tougher than it is now, let alone to build out an entire organization to fight for trans people's rights. So I'm deeply great and eternally grateful for you to build this organization up. I'm honored to be trusted to lead it into the next chapter, to be working with the whole team, shoulder to shoulder, to get this done. And I'm excited for what NCTE has next. I think we're going to be able to produce even more victories for our people. So I think we've got a bright future ahead of us as trans people.
Yeah, and you've got a fantastic board. You've got a fantastic staff. Speaking of the staff and the board, they would want me to remind you that anytime you get a chance to talk to people, you probably ought to ask for money. But if you'd allow me, as my last ask as executive director, to just say how important it is right now during this transition. We've done it as carefully and as well as we can, but the truth is Rigo needs your support. The staff needs your support, and to continue doing this work, we need the support to be a lot and smooth. So monthly donations are so important. If you can join our Capital Club, which is a monthly donation of up to, or $1,000 a year, which can be donated monthly. But any donation you can give is really helpful right now, so that Rigo and the staff can focus on this life-saving changes that we're making for trans people. I hope that was okay to do, Rigo. I know we didn't plan on that, but I was thinking of the staff, and I was thinking of the development staff in particular, and we'd both be yelled at if one of us didn't do that.
Hey, I'm not mad about it. And thank you all for watching. You know, Mara is right. I will echo that we need your support. This is one of the best ways to get involved. I mean, it gives us the resources we need to get it done for trans people. So thank you to all our current donors. Thank you for all of you for becoming new donors, hopefully, and thank all of you for watching. You know, sign up for our email list, follow us on social media if you're not doing it already. We've got big campaigns ahead of us, and we want you involved. So check us out online, transequality.org, and thank all of you for watching. Take care, y'all.